Sarah covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. She never knew Mark had planned to get rid of Ethan so cruelly. Dr. Collins was pale, realizing that his client had just been destroyed by his own words. "There's more," Ethan said calmly, stopping the recording. "This part is about what he really thinks of me." The second part of the recording was even more devastating. The problem isn't just the money. It's that the boy is too smart for his own good. He asks questions, observes everything. It would be best to keep him out of the picture until he's 18 and I can sort out the financial situation. Kids like him. Well, we don't want him getting any ideas above his station. Mark exploded. "This is a trap. He provoked me on purpose. A 9-year-old boy can't." "A 9-year-old can't what?" Ethan interrupted, his voice cutting like a knife. "Can't be smart? Can't defend himself? Can't expose the truth about a father who sees him as a problem to be solved." Judge Thompson turned off the tape recorder and looked directly at Mark Reynolds. "Mr. Reynolds, this recording, combined with the financial evidence presented, paints a very clear picture of your true motivations." "Your Honor," Ethan continued, "I have also discovered that Riverside Military Academy has a terrible track record. In the last 5 years, 3 students have committed suicide there. The institution is under federal investigation for physical and emotional abuse of minors. Dr. Collins tried one last desperate card. Your Honor, even considering these allegations, the fact remains that my client has superior financial resources." "To do what?" Ethan interrupted. "To send me to a place where children die? To use my inheritance money while pretending to care about me? To isolate me from the only person who truly loves me?" Mark finally lost his composure completely. "You're nothing but an arrogant child who doesn't know his place. I'm your father, and you're a stranger who shares my DNA." "A real father wouldn't try to get rid of his own son to steal his money," Ethan replied, his calmness sending a chill through the room. Judge Thompson banged his gavel to restore order. "Mr. Reynolds, sit down immediately or you will be removed from my courtroom." Ethan turned to the last page of his notebook. "Your Honor, there is one last thing I need to mention. Something I discovered about why my grandmother really set up that trust fund." Mark's face paled even further. "I found a letter from her in the estate files. A letter addressed to me to be opened when I turned 16. Ms. Johnson helped me find out that I can request early access in cases of custody disputes. The final bombshell was about to drop. My grandmother wrote that she knew Mark was never a good father, that she established a trust specifically to protect me from him, and that if he ever tried to get custody of me just for the money, I should use every resource in the trust to defend myself." Ethan closed a notebook and looked directly at Mark Reynolds. "She even hired private investigators who documented all of his financial schemes over the years. It's all on file with the fund's administrator." Mark Reynolds slumped in his chair, finally realizing that he had been completely outmaneuvered by a 9-year-old. He had considered Ethan nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. Judge Thompson banged his gavel. "Based on all the evidence presented, including financial documents, recordings, and the plaintiff's demonstrated history, the custody request is categorically denied. Furthermore, I order a full investigation into the possible fraudulent use of trust funds." Dr. Collins whispered urgently to Mark, but it was clear that the case was irretrievably lost. Ethan methodically put away his materials, displaying the same calm he had maintained throughout the hearing. "Your Honor, may I make one last request?" "You may, Ethan. I would like Mr. Reynolds to know that I did not do this out of anger or revenge. I did it because every child deserves to have a family that truly loves them, not one that sees them as a financial opportunity." As Mark Reynolds left the room, escorted by security guards, the judge had ordered his immediate arrest for attempted fraud. Ethan finally allowed a small smile to appear on his face. In that silent courtroom, a 9-year-old child had just proven that intelligence, preparation, and true love can defeat any amount of money and privilege. But Ethan's victory represents something much greater than a simple custody battle. It was the beginning of a transformation that would change his family's life forever. 3 years passed since that historic day in court, and Ethan Carter's life transformed in ways he could never have predicted. The recording that destroyed Mark Reynolds not only won the case, It went viral on social media, turning Ethan into a national symbol of a generation of children who refuse to accept injustice silently. The video amassed over 50 million views and inspired legislative changes in 17 U.S. states. Today, we welcome 12-year-old Ethan Carter, who 3 years ago shocked the country by defending his mother in court using only his wits and a public library, announced the host of America's most watched morning show. Ethan, how does it feel to be called the smartest kid in America? Ethan, now taller and wearing new glasses but still as calm as ever, smiled. I'd rather just be called Ethan, who learned that every child has a voice, even when adults pretend not to listen. The studio audience erupted in emotional applause. Sarah watched from backstage, wearing her nursing supervisor's uniform, a promotion she received after her story inspired a national campaign about working mothers. The hospital where she worked had established a scholarship fund called the Sarah Carter Program for children of low-income employees. His mother is here with us today, the host continued. Sarah, how does it feel to see your son become an inspiration to millions of families? Sarah joined them on stage, still shy from all the attention, but radiating the same pride she had felt that day in court. Ethan has always been special, but what makes me most proud is not his intelligence. It's his heart. He could have used a story to brag, but he chose to use it to help other families. And it was true. Ethan had spent the last 3 years visiting schools in underserved communities, teaching children about their basic legal rights. His book, Every Child Has a Voice, became a bestseller, with all proceeds going to a fund that provided free legal assistance to families in custody disputes. Ethan, tell me about the cool law library project you started, the host asked. Well, after I saw how a public library saved me, I thought, how many other kids are going through similar situations without knowing where to turn for help? Ethan adjusted his glasses, a gesture that had become his trademark. We created small sections in 1,200 public libraries with children's rights books in simple language, as well as computers with free access to basic legal resources. The camera focused on Sarah, who discreetly wiped away a tear. In 3 years, she had witnessed her son transform personal trauma into a social movement. Meanwhile, across town, Mark Reynolds watched the television program from his small studio apartment in the suburbs. His hair had turned gray, his clothes were simple, and he worked as a salesman at an electronics store, the only job he could find after his story became public. The court-ordered investigation had revealed not only the attempt to defraud Ethan's trust fund, but a web of financial schemes that completely dismantled Reynolds' enterprises. Mark lost everything. His company, his mansion, his marriage, and his reputation. His former partner sued him for fraud, and he spent 18 months in prison. The kid's on the show again, he muttered to himself, turning off the television in anger. Not a week had gone by without Ethan's story appearing somewhere, reminding the world of his crimes. The most painful thing for Mark was realizing that Ethan never spoke ill of him publicly. When asked about his biological father, the boy always responded with a maturity that further embarrassed the man who had tried to use him. I hope he finds peace and learns that true love cannot be bought or stolen. Ethan had said in a recent interview, holding a grudge doesn't help anyone, but setting boundaries is essential to protecting those we love. Back in the television studio, the host asked her final question. Ethan, what advice would you give other children who are facing difficult family situations? Ethan thought for a moment, then looked directly into the camera. First, you're not alone. Second, you have more power than you know. And third, the truth always finds a way to win, even when it seems impossible. He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the wisdom of someone who had faced giants and won. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too small to make a difference. I was 9 years old when I changed my life, and my mother's life forever. You can change yours, too. 6 months later, Ethan received a special letter. It was from Sophia Martinez, a 10-year-old girl from Los Angeles who had used the cool LA Libraries project to help her immigrant grandmother avoid an unfair eviction. The letter ended with, "Thank you for teaching me that every child has a voice. I used mine and saved my family." Sarah found Ethan reading the letter in his room, surrounded by hundreds of similar letters from children across the country. "How does it feel to know that your courage has inspired so many people?" she asked. Ethan carefully folded Sophia's letter and placed it in the special box where he kept all his correspondence. Remember when you told me that sometimes the scariest things in life turn out to be the most important? Sarah nodded, recalling that conversation perfectly. I think I understand now. If Mark Reynolds had never tried to tear us apart, I would never have discovered that a child can change a world when adults stop underestimating them. That same day, Ethan received a call that would change his life again. Harvard University was offering a full scholarship to a special program in law and social justice, the first of its kind created specifically for students who had demonstrated exceptional social leadership before the age of 16. Will you accept? Sarah asked after Ethan hung up the phone. I accept, but on one condition, Ethan smiled. I want to use my education to create a legal system that protects all children, not just those who are lucky enough to be smart enough to protect themselves. Years later, when Ethan Carter became the youngest lawyer ever admitted to the bar at the age of 16, his first case was a lawsuit against the educational system for failing to teach basic children's rights in public schools. He won, setting a precedent that made legal education mandatory for all American students. Mark Reynolds never fully recovered from his downfall. Living modestly and working jobs that barely paid his bills, he sometimes found himself reflecting on the extraordinary son he had lost to greed. In moments of honesty with himself, he recognized that Ethan had become exactly the kind of man he himself had never been able to be. Ethan Carter's story proved that true strength does not come from money or connections, but from a combination of intelligence, courage, and unconditional love. A 9-year-old boy had defeated a corrupt system using only a public library, unwavering determination, and the transformative power of truth. Ethan learned that when you fight for what is right, the universe conspires in your favor. Mark Reynolds learned that underestimating a determined child can be the most expensive mistake of a lifetime. And millions of children around the world learn that their voices matter, that their rights are real, and that they are never too small to fight for justice. Ethan's greatest revenge was not destroying Mark Reynolds. It was building a legacy that would save thousands of families from the same injustices he had faced. If this story of courage and determination has inspired you, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that sometimes the most unlikely heroes are the ones the world insists on underestimating.